The majority of the rivers, or certainly the majority of rivers I fish for sea trout, I would classify as medium-sized. And for that, a 10-foot 7 weight is kind of my go-to. 10-foot 7 weight, 10-foot 8 weight, 9-foot 6, doesn't really matter. But something around there is pretty much your go-to when it comes to sea trout fishing. If you're fishing, obviously, some of the smaller rivers, for example, some of the smaller rivers down in Cornwall, you might be fishing the likes of the Till. You can fish a lighter rod, a shorter rod, whatever. But I would say as the main stem, a 10-foot 7 weight is your go-to. And most people have a 10-foot 7 weight if you're fishing light salmon fishing, for example. If you're lake fishing, reservoir fishing, all of that. A lot of people have something similar. So if it's a 9.5 or a 6 weight, if it's a 10.5 or an 8, around there is absolutely perfect. Rod action, not many people cover this. I actually think the action of the rod is pretty important. You don't want a fast action rod. You want something that's medium or medium fast. My go-to is the Sage R8 Core, which is medium fast. Again, 10-foot 7 weight. I love the action of these. I would classify these as a fishing rod rather than a casting rod. A lot of rods nowadays are extremely fast. Don't lend themselves, especially if you're a beginner, don't lend themselves very well to river fishing as well. So if you're doing a lot of waterborne casts, roll casting, all that kind of stuff, you want a slightly more open action in your rod rather than those fast action rods. So medium fast is definitely the way to go. It's going to open up your loops as well, especially if you're night fishing. It should give you less tangles. I'm not going to promise that, but it should, in theory, give you less tangles. If you're starting out in this game, and actually for the majority of my fishing nowadays, under what I would classify as normal summer conditions, low water, clear water, warm-ish water, you probably only need a floating line. I accompany the floating line with some tips. We'll get into the tips in a second, but a floating line, but you want that floating line to be a fairly fast-loading floating line. So what I mean in that terms is a fairly short head or very short belly section on your floating line, so loads that rod up really quickly. The last thing you want is essentially a lot of the lake fishing lines, which may have a much longer head, a much longer belly, which means you have to get a lot more of the line outside the rod tip to fully load your rod. So you either get a short belly or short head floating line, or you can overload the line as well. So say if you have got a traditional floating line for lake or reservoir fishing, perhaps put an number 8 line through your number 7 rod. And as always, if you can try before you buy, even better. And go to, again, if you go to a good tackle shop, and a good tackle shop is worth its weight in gold, it really is. Likes of John Norris, I work a lot alongside the likes of John Norris. Yeah, the team there will be hugely knowledgeable in the lines they have in stock and what will suit you for that given scenario. So beyond that then, saying I've just got that floating line loaded on there, I'm traveling really light. I carry everything in a waist pack. Everything I need is going to be really accessible. I can get into everything really easily, regardless if I'm on the riverbank or if I'm out on, in the middle of the river. Alongside that, the floating line, I usually then carry some poly leaders. So I've got that in essentially an intermediate, a medium sink and a fast sink. That's pretty much it. Don't overcomplicate things. 8 to 10 foot. I wouldn't go longer than 10 foot. You'll find that it starts to hinge a lot if you go beyond 10 foot. And also make sure they're in salmon strength. Do not fish trout strength. The breaking strain of the trout strength poly leaders are usually around 12 pounds, where these are usually like 20 to 24. They will have a stiffer or a steeper tapering as well. So these will help turn things over and not hinge on your line or hinge on the fly in the leader as well. So I usually just carry the floating line, a small selection of poly leaders, and you're pretty much good to go. Beyond that, then I'm obviously carrying a couple of different leader materials. So I'm carrying some fluorocarbon, some light fluorocarbon, like 10, 12, 15, something similar in fluorocarbon, and then some heavier stuff. So I really like the Fluoroflex Strong. I've actually only got the 15 in the bag with me now. I usually carry that in 11.1. When I'm fishing in the daytime or if I'm fishing at dusk with smaller flies, I'll usually fish this in 11.1. That's usually my go-to. And then at night, I'm fishing bog standard, 15 pounds straight through. The likes of Maxima Ultra Green. Don't buy expensive stuff for night fishing. You just don't need it. It's as simple as that. Work on diameters around 0.035 to 0.38 millimeter. And around 15 pound breaking strain. That's pretty much your go-to. No tapering, just keep things really, really simple. So I carry a spool of that. That's actually, again, Maxima Ultra Green is perfect. But I tend to buy, because of how much night fishing I do, I tend to carry like a 1,000 meter spool, and then I decant that onto smaller spools. I actually use a lot of carp fishing line for my night fishing. So that's pretty much the go-to on that front. Beyond that, I want everything within close vicinity. At night fishing, you don't want to be searching around for things. So I've always got snips and disgorger around my neck. So I've always got easy access to all of that. And I usually clip as well. What you won't see on here, I haven't got it on there at the moment. I usually have a really small torch on there as well. But in addition to that, I always carry my head torch. I always go for Lenser. I used Lenser for years. They do what they say on the tin, but also the battery life on these, they're all rechargeable. The battery life is incredible on them. So I would highly recommend buying a really good head torch, then carrying a really small torch on your lanyards, something you have access to at all times. And beyond that then is really just down to flies. So I'll carry usually 3 boxes. That's just my Sunray box. That's a box of small wets, small doubles essentially. That's basically for my daytime and dusk fishing. And then my main nighttime box, which is basically, yeah, that's going to cover everything I'm going to need at night. So everything is basically there in one box. I know which one I'm reaching in for. That's my pre-night fishing, and this is my proper night fishing. So beyond that, that is pretty much what I'm carrying on my person at all times. Everything, as you can see, is within very easy reach. But I know just by picking up this bag, I'm well set and ready to go. Don't overcomplicate things. That's the worst thing you can do, especially if you're night fishing. Keep things really simple. Keep things close by and just enjoy the session.